Hi, folks. Welcome to the fifth in our series of podcasts and coaching conversations whilst lockdown 2.0 is here. Obviously, we're all itching to get back on the grass and to give us a little bit of insight into his journey, his coaching. He's a good friend of mine, known him for a long time, Rob Williams. Say hi, Rob.
Good morning, Russ, and everybody else that's having a listen. Hope everyone's okay.
I'm sure we are. And thanks to BRM Solutions again for being our technological partner and helping us share this stuff out. So, for those who don't know on here, Rob is a Black Country resident, which always goes down well. Rob, where do you reside in the area?
Well, I'm a Black Country resident now. I've been in and around for a good few years. So currently Hales Owen, but a little bit of history in Cradley Heath and Stourbridge, and yeah. So I've been over here a few years now, Russ.
Have you ever had a pack of scratchings?
I've had a pack of scratchings. I've had orange chips, and all those. Well, I'd describe those at least as two pretty typical Black Country delicacies.
Well, you're in. You're in. So we'll allow that. Rob, tell us what job you do. What is your full-time job?
So currently head of coach development at Shrewsbury Town. So I've been there for almost 15 months, I think now. Not that I'm counting. And prior to that, I did 2 years in the same role, but at Walsall. So I've been in the kind of head of coaching role for just over 3 years now.
And just so that everyone knows, because people might not be aware, head of coaching is a role that's in every football club academy. Is that right, Rob?
They've been around now for probably around 4 years. Every club has one, or has the opportunity to have one. There's a couple of clubs who don't. A couple of the bigger clubs, they sort of do things their own way. But I think there's 93 of us in total, but that includes like lads who work at clubs who got relegated to the conference. So Notts County have still got a head of coaching because the funding still sits there for them. So there's about 93 of us in total. And really they came about as part of the integrated coaching strategy. Typically coach education was obviously delivered by the FA through courses and CPD and stuff. The Premier League and other stakeholders wanted to be part of that process and try and tie it all together. So the Premier League basically give every club a ring fence sum of money, which they can then use to employ a head of coaching, and they can't use for anything else. So, and the theory is that it's about developing better coaches and long-term developing better players.
Okay, so sounds like a good job that sounds very rewarding, but we'll dig into that a little bit more as we go. Most of the audience that we get on our podcast is either A, grassroots coaches who coach within the Black Country, or B, students learning the game, getting their first experiences. And one of the things that I'm often asked by coaches, predominantly in more of the grassroots game, is I really don't like my job. How could I change my job and go into coaching? Because, you know, it's a growing profession. So I think we'll start, Rob, with how did you become a coach? Because maybe some of your insight might help here.
Yeah, I think you're right, Russ. Firstly, in terms of that, there's more opportunities now to work in and around sports, football in particular, that we're talking about than probably ever. And I'm fairly certain that will only grow as opposed to diminish. So I think there are more and more opportunities, but then there's also more and more people who are having those sort of thoughts, conversations. You know, I've spoken to obviously students at your university numerous times about, you know, the number of people going through now specific football coaching degrees or analysis degrees or whatever it might be, which was very different, certainly when I started, probably when you started a little bit. It's very, very different. So listen, it's a long story, Russ, and I'll keep it really short if I can. But so coaching wasn't really seen as a proper job when I would have been at school. In fact, it definitely wasn't seen as a proper job. And if I'd said to someone at school, careers staff or whatever, who probably was a maths teacher as well, if I remember rightly, that I wanted to be a football coach for a job or work in football as a job, they'd have probably laughed me out of the room, Russ, you know. So I think it's changed a lot. I got into it strictly by luck than judgment. It wasn't really part of the plan. The only thing that was part of the plan was to try and do something that I enjoyed doing. When I was at school, when work experience was a thing, I did a couple of weeks working for a local electrical contractor. I actually really enjoyed it. So when I left school in 1988, I did an apprenticeship. Obviously, apprenticeships are kind of back in vogue now, aren't they? They went out of fashion for a while, but they're back in vogue here and there. So I qualified as an electrician, Russ, and to be fair, really enjoyed it. Do you know what I mean? I had some real good experiences, met some really good people. Did earn a fairly good salary for a 16, 17, 18-year-old or whatever it was at the time. So kind of did okay. And football coaching only came about through someone that I knew through playing, who was doing a FA prelim, which is now like the level 2 equivalent, or was the level 2 equivalent. And I went and did the course just to take 6 days off work and go and run about and probably just kind of enjoy myself more than thinking it was going to be a career-changing, life-changing sort of situation. So it was kind of by mistake, really, Russ. But actually, what turned out to be a really positive mistake, stroke a bit of luck, because it's kind of, since that point on, changed everything I've done.
Yeah, I think, as an adult, it's kind of that decision, isn't it? Because you're right, 20 years or so ago, I'm the only person from my college who works in sport. And even I give an example that our coach at college was Craig Shakespeare, who obviously people will know. He's the Aston Villa assistant manager or worked with England, etc. But that wasn't his full-time job. He was doing other things as well. And 20 odd years ago, this wasn't the case. Even the great Pete Sturgis used to work at Stafford College. It was something that you did on alongside. And those opportunities now, especially for students or existing coaches, and especially those who are parents, you've got really good skill sets that you can change into coaching within schools, clubs, teams, disability. There's such a wide range now where coaching happens, really.
And I think it's almost that. The one thing it taught me was that like, it's never too late. Do you know what I mean? You can change your mind. You might set off on one path with a plan, and actually that path or plan can change. Do you know what I mean? And I think it, based on circumstance or network, whatever it might be. So it's just because you're doing one thing doesn't mean you can't eventually move and change and do something else. And probably looking back on it, it was probably not. I went through that initial coach education experience at a good time. It obviously had a bit of a profound effect on me, because it kind of then changed what I wanted to do, and it became clear that coaching, teaching was the sort of thing I wanted to get into. So, I was a little bit behind a number of other people that I might have studied with and whatever else in terms of age, but it sort of, it just reminds me that, and I say to my kids now, you might decide now that your GCSE age and you think you want to do this. Well, that's cool, go for that, but you might change your mind down the line, and that's also fine, because there's lots of opportunity.
Absolutely. And if you think about post-COVID and making an active nation, for those who don't know, we have a government strategy of active nation, that the more people we can help to be active, and coaching is a key enabler of that, then the less we're going to be paying of long-term illness, disease, etc., NHS, etc. And really, it's a big growing profession. And for those who are thinking of a change, you know what, there is work there, but you might have to do the hard miles. And I think the hard miles is kind of where we'll take our chat next, Rob, because I'm going to ask you this question. In your life as a coach, whether it be in the academy or wherever you've worked, have you ever done a 36-hour week?
I've never done a 36-hour week. I think I had this conversation with a group of your students last week, Russ. It's that thing around, I've probably done I can't think of many that I haven't done. I've probably done every role. When I say every role, I mean camps, disability football, boys, girls, adults, kids, tying shoelaces, taking kids to the toilet because they've just come out from getting dressed and now they need the loo again. working till, blimey, back in the day, and we might talk about it, working till midnight on the Twilight Midnight League in Wolverhampton. Anything and everything. And if you're going to go into certainly football, the nature of the industry is it's not necessarily a lot of hours all the time, but it's unsociable hours. Do you know what I mean? So it's evenings and weekends. It's early mornings at times, whatever it might be. So but that's that groundwork and putting that time in on the grass, doing tying kids' laces on a camp, managing a group of 35-year-olds. Those are the bits that actually have the real value and help you get where you want to get to. Do you know what I mean? And quite often you have to go and do that for nothing, because people won't pay you for it. So I think it's invaluable, Russ, and we might take this sort of chat further, but for I'm sure we all going our level 2, and we're going to go and earn £20 an hour or 30 grand a year or whatever it might be. Well, it doesn't start like that, unfortunately. It starts with the hard graft in the snow and the rain and the cold and the whatever else it might be. That's where you learn your craft, really.
I found, especially in my journey, that something that really stuck with me, that you can go really far on your own. However, you can only go so far, because when you go with others, so the network question of who you're working with and who you come across, you'll tend to go longer for a longer period of time and have a better success. And it's something I've really found. And how have you found that collaboration with others and that network that you might build along the way? Is it paying off, obviously, now in your 20 years plus in the industry?
Yeah, it's a well-used phrase, isn't it, around it's not what you know, it's who you know. And it's certainly in our industry, it's absolutely valid. I still call on people that I know for a bit of help and support. So obviously BRM are supporting some of these recordings for you in terms of, so Ben, who's obviously kind of drives that, one of the things I needed to upskill myself around was analysis. And that only came about through meeting Ben, through a link with the university, etc., etc. And he then helped me with upskilling myself to then upskill other staff around use of analysis, as an example. Or, it might be tapping into to yourself for links with students who need placements. We need students who need to gain experience through filming or pulling data together or whatever it may be. And I know that I can give you a call and go, look, I could do two or three students. Who you got? And that network is everything. And it's a really, although it's a big industry, it's a very tight knit, small industry. Everybody, if you don't know everybody, you know someone who knows everybody, and it definitely, without a shadow of a doubt. And for me, that's part of the joy of doing what we do. So I think about people who are around now. So I think about some of the staff at Villa Ladies or Villa Women, for example. So Gemma and Jenny and Carly, who lead that program. So Gemma was a student of mine at Sutton College. I'm sure I put her through a level 1. Jenny used to come and work at the Girls' Centre of Excellence, as was at Wolves when I was in charge of that. Carly played for me. Do you know what I mean? And it's, do you know what I mean? The network is everything. Going on courses is a must, because you have to have and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, you have to have a certain level of qualification to demonstrate competence to be able to get yourself in the door in certain places, whatever it might be. But actually, it's all that other stuff that actually, the opportunity and the experience and the time spent with people and working, and that's where you really learn about coaching and you develop that network that is going to keep you in and around it for whatever number of years it might be that you're in and around it.
Absolutely. So something that is often a forum or a theme of, especially those guys who coach in clubs and grassroots settings, that I tend to see a lot of, is how does a grassroots coach get a job or an opportunity to work in an academy? Would that be a network thing, or is there a pathway? What's your experience of that, and especially now in the role that you've got?
It can be a network thing. And I'm not going to say it's really easy, because it's not really easy thing to do. And you almost end up in that sort of catch-22 place, don't you? So, you maybe haven't got the right qualification and the experience, therefore, when you're looking at the sort of jobs around you, you therefore don't meet those criteria. But then if I haven't got certainly the experience, how do I get the experience that might get me in the door? And it's really difficult. So the underpinning piece is you've got to tick the qualifications box. So for someone to come in and work as a part-time member of staff in any academy, there's a minimum requirement, which is B license and youth award. So that's the first stumbling block, and I think that itself, Russ, throws up a number of potential challenges or issues. So, and I know you did one of these podcasts around like coach education early on in this lockdown. So, that almost for those that do think they want to go and work in an academy program, it almost forces people to chase a qualification. So you'll have experienced it, and I've seen more and more of it now. You coaches who, particularly young coaches who are driven and want to think they want to go into a full-time role in the game at some point. They'll do a level 2, then they'll go and try and get on a level 3 sort of as soon as is humanly possible, without actually doing that stuff we've talked about, that bit about going and getting the experience on the grass and working with players and really getting a really good solid level 2 before thinking about level 3. But I also admire their drive. Do you know what I mean? So it's that funny kind of, I want to work in the game, so I've got to get that qualification. But how much time do I give myself to really go and learn the craft again before I go chase that qualification? Do you know, that's a real catch-22, I think.
I think one thing I've found in the last 5 years at least is we as practitioners, so for those who don't know, me and Rob also work on behalf of the FA to deliver some of the calls and that, is whenever people have applied for the next badge, whether it be 2, 3 or whatever it is, I've only really given my reference to those who I know has done the hard miles.
Yeah.
If I know someone to be quick, fast and easy, I've not. And that network comes back to it so for example, in the old system, which obviously finished during this COVID period, we would have a phone call for a B license to say, "Oh, yeah, Russ, we've had so-and-so applying from Dudley area. Do you know him?" And I would say, "Yeah, he's a great guy. He does X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. I'll put my name towards it." Whereas someone else, I might go, "Yeah, they just kind of did the bare minimum and kind of, trying to quick, fast and easy, really." And I don't think people know it works like that. I mean, I don't know if you've done similar.
Yeah, without a doubt. I've had numerous conversations certainly over the past the first lockdown, and the last 12 months before that, probably around, do you know so and so? What are they like? What do they do? Blah blah blah. What do you know? And that for me is the right way to go about it, for sure. But then, like, it's the other thing that's like blatantly obvious for me is about just having a certain level of qualification or whatever actually doesn't mean you're any good on the grass. And it's really I've become more aware of that, I think, over the last probably 2 to 3 years being involved in this kind of role. There's lots of people with B licenses who actually, when it comes down to it, may not be all that on the grass. Put them in front of a group of players, it doesn't maybe look like you would want it to look. And on the flip side to that, there's lots of level 2 coaches you're like, they're so good with the players, and actually the qualification bit means I can't give them a job. Do you know what I mean? It's really interesting thing. So I've tried to do something about it, Russ, in terms of I started it at Walsall, and I've implemented it at our place now. So we run a coach volunteer program. So I know for a fact at Walsall now there's a couple of lads who are now in paid part-time roles at Walsall who initially came in as volunteers when I was there, and I've now got I've got 8 coaches who are part of our coach volunteer program, and they are because they're looking to develop some experience so they can apply for jobs in academies, but they can't get that experience without somebody giving them the opportunity. Do you know what I mean? So what it means is I've now got 8 extra pairs of hands who are, ranging in qualification. One's A license and others are level 2, and a couple working towards B license, and probably would have finished if COVID hadn't come around and all that sort of stuff. And they literally come in, once a week, some of them 2 or 3 times a week, depending on their availability. And I'm like, look, you can come and lap it up and you can get as much experience as you want. And, I want you to do this, this and this for me, but in return, you'll get this, this and this. Now, whether you end up working at Shrewsbury or whether you end up applying for a job at West Brom and going there, I'm cool either way. Do you know what I mean? So it's, for me, it's a win-win. We win, we get more staff. So we've got an extra 8 staff that we wouldn't have had. And they get the experience that potentially might, 1, make them employable with us, or 2, make them employable elsewhere. So, and I think there's a place for us as academies to do that, particularly smaller clubs and smaller academies like ourselves, where, we're not as well resourced as a Cat 1 academy of Villa or West Brom. We don't have as many staff. We need, having extra bodies around the building is a massive help. And if it helps them along the way, so they then get exactly the same as part-time staff get. So I do one-to-ones with them, I do observations with them, they get feedback, they attend all our coach development stuff. So I'll give them as much of an experience of being in the academy as I can without paying them. But hopefully it puts them in a good place. And again, 2 of those who started that program with me when I first started at Shrewsbury, 2 of them are now in paid part-time role. So it works.
It sounds to me like the non-monetary value of mentoring, opportunity, and pathway will pay off eventually. So it's what you put in is what you get out. But you can't buy Rob's mentoring. You can't buy the opportunity. It's not something you can get everywhere. So I think if that pathway is there and you're a coach that wants to do that, Rob's giving you an example of what Shrewsbury do and what Walsall still do from Neil, who you heard from previously. Do all clubs do that, Rob?
Not many, Russ. Some do. Lots have sort of student placements and stuff like that, and then interns and so on. Lots do that sort of stuff, but not so many do a more formal volunteer program, which is what I might call it, I suppose. And listen, that's each to their own. They'll have reasons why they do or they don't, and that's fine. For us, it works, and it's straight interesting. I've got as part of our role, we're doing so we get education through the Premier League as part of our role. So we're doing a postgrad qualification, and I've got to do a presentation this afternoon to the Premier League, strangely enough, around recruitment and retention of coaches. And I'm going to talk a lot around this sort of idea of growing your own staff. And for me, part of that is, if I've got a member of staff who maybe comes in as a volunteer, spends 12, 18 months, whatever, doing that, an opportunity comes up, we know we've got 2 or 3 candidates already in the building who can apply for that. They know the process. We know what they're like. We know they're committed. We know they've got the right sort of personality. We now know they've got the right level of qualification because we might have been able to support them through that. Do you know what I mean? I'm almost developing my own group of staff.
Absolutely.
I know when they come in at the start, I know what I'm getting.
Do you tend to get, and obviously I don't know the answer to it, so do you tend to get adults or students? And when I say students, I mean young adults, really. So what's your mix of people who take up the opportunities, whether you found at Walsall or now?
A bit of both, Russell, if I'm honest. And it probably, I was a little surprised, to be honest. I thought it would be students, younger people, young adults who are thinking about a career in the game, whatever. But actually, I think about guys now. I've got a guy in our program who is early 50s, A license qualified. Used to live and work overseas. Got his A license overseas. and he's now back in the UK. Really experienced. Do you know what I mean? But not experience of working in an academy in this country. So if he applies for an academy role, people may well come back to him with a, well, actually, you've got no experience. So he now with us is getting loads of experience that he would not normally get. And I've got myself an A licensed coach. So he's one end of the spectrum, if you like. And at the other end, I've got a level 1 coach who's halfway through his level 2, mid-20s, works in grassroots, desperate to try and find a way into the game. An unbelievable, committed. I'll call him a lad. That's probably doing him a disservice. He's a man really, but at the opposite end of the scale. Do you know what I mean? He came in and watched our under-18s practice yesterday. He stayed on and watched the under-14s train last night. He's coming to the under-18s game Friday. He's just lapping it up and desperate for it. And he's the sort people take notice of, don't they? Do you know what I mean? So already, we as full-time staff, we go, he's a good lad. He's a good lad. Now, listen, at the moment, he's miles away from being in a position where we could give him a job. But actually, hopefully, through what we're supporting him with, he might get to a point where he's ready to go on a B license at some point. And if he's still with us at that point, I'm fairly certain he's the type who you would look to give a job to.
And I think your opportunity, and something that Neil said on his, was you don't just have the FA courses, you have the organised courses, PFA and Premier League, don't you, that you can signpost into?
Yeah, so coach education, if you're in a club, it's slightly different. So we have sort of designated FA staff who support us, and through that we have opportunity to get people on courses. So you'll know coaches, I'm sure, who maybe have got a youth award and have wanted to do an advanced youth award perhaps, and they can't get on one if they're in grassroots typically. Whereas we'll have a designated number of places for our staff to go on those courses through the FA. So it works slightly differently, but you're absolutely right. For someone like him who, listen, he's barely finished his level 2 yet. So listen, he's a long way away from probably being anywhere near in terms of the qualification piece for us. But when he has got a level 2 and he's spent a bit of time with us, we could probably, I'm sure at some point we'll be able to get him to a B licence course, which he may not get if he's working in a grassroots club, perhaps.
Yeah, there's more opportunity to link to that. Something you've said, which some people might not know, is you've mentioned the word youth award a few times. So for clarity, folks, what used to be in existence till about 2017 was a pathway to just have what was called the youth award 1, 2, 3. So those were kind of 2 or 3 day courses, with the third one being assessed with your team and a portfolio. Now, those ceased to exist because the content from them were put into the FA level 2, and then Youth Award Module 3, I think, went into the UEFA B content, Rob, I think. And I've had coaches ask me about, how do I get on a Youth Award? But I think the deal is, Rob, they don't exist anymore.
No, they've gone. And listen, I don't know the reason why they did go. They were tremendous, Russ. I mean, you'll have gone through them. A number of guys that we know will have gone through them. They were really good courses. I think one of the challenges was certainly around, as a grassroots coach, a parent, you're being asked to go on a level 1, a level 2, a module 1, a module 2. It just added more time, didn't it, and more costs to the coach. I guess that was probably part of the reason why maybe they kind of got integrated into other existing courses, but it also then updated so the level 2 now, as you all know, is a very different course to the level 2 or the prelim that you and I would have done in terms of content and how it prepares a coach to go and work with a group of grassroots players. But they were great courses, and listen, again, through working in the game, I've been lucky, so I've had access to getting an A licence, an AYA, and so on. The youth awards were excellent, and the advanced youth award is excellent as a course. The content, the way it's put together, for me was a better learning experience than the A license for sure. But as a grassroots coach, it's certainly currently very difficult, if not almost impossible, to get on an advanced youth award. And I'm not sure quite where it's going moving forward. I don't know what's happening with courses next year. Obviously, we know bits and bobs about level ones online and all that sort of stuff, but I'm not quite sure what's happening at the other end with the more advanced level courses. And obviously, I guess it'll be COVID dependent, because they did start doing stuff again. So some of our staff who were doing advanced youth award went back in for certain blocks between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2. Then obviously lockdown 2 has now kind of come in. So basically, I think courses at St George's have been shut down until the new year. And so I'm not quite sure what's happening with those. But yeah, we working in the elite stroke pro game. If one thing it does do is it does give you access to those courses.
One thing that's, kind of the reason of Black Country Coaches Club is building across, some of the networks and grassroots coaches, students, etc., of making that community of practice really, and joining people together because more heads are better. But one of the core principles of it is we won't just be the digital learning. It will be very much face-to-face things to support people in their setting, with their players, with their kids, with their coaches. And that's something obviously COVID has affected as an industry really. I mean, there's so many national governing bodies of sport who have gone, do you know what, we just have a digital offer only. And in your role of supporting coaches, where do you think the world of digital coach education sits?
It's a real interesting one, Russ, I think. Listen, there's been some unbelievable content over, what was it, Friday, March the 13th was the day we walked out of our building for the first lockdown. The amount of digital content has been unbelievable. And some of it has been really good, and a lot of it is really good, don't get me wrong. And listen, we did as much as anybody as a club. So I got our staff together as a staff once every week for 20 whatever weeks it was. That would never happen in real life. Do you know what I mean? In the typical normal run of a normal period, no COVID, etc. I'm lucky if I get all our staff together 2 or 3 times a season with the non-stop games, training, and all that that's going on. So there was real value in that, and I think there was some real positives for us that came out of that. The negative that comes out of that, and the conversation I've been having with coaches has been about, I've got all this knowledge and I've got all this information, I haven't been able to put it into practice. So I've listened to all these different people speak, and whatever it might be, and I've got all these notes and I've got all this information, and I actually physically haven't had the chance to do it. And we're at a point now where obviously we came back and we're now back, and unlike grassroots, we haven't had to stop. So it's a little different, and they are getting a chance to experiment and try stuff and use some of that potential learning. But just fundamentally, I don't, for me, Russ, and listen, whether this right or wrong or not, I don't know. For me, you can't learn to coach on a computer. You can be given some information. You can learn some content, but the only way of actually physically learning it is to be on the grass with people. In the act of coaching. So whether that's watching someone coach, or when we used to do it, the days of playing in, when I did the A license, I must have played in God knows how many 11v11 games. Do you know what I mean? But it was all learning. Do you know what I mean? It was all learning, being coached by other candidates on the course, or tutors, or whatever it might be. Physically in the act of doing it, and I worry about. My worry is, so I don't know, a course is all online. It'll qualify X number of coaches, and they'll come away with some knowledge, don't get me wrong, and some ideas, and it'll trigger some thinking. But actually, they've then got to go on the grass and use it and do it. Do you know what I mean? And I think you miss that interaction, and that interaction piece for me is massive. So, whether it's
the people side,
talking about practice design, or whether it's been on the grass, looking at a particular theme, or for me, for coaches to get good at coaching, they've got to be involved in that process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if you remember, one of the things that we were introduced to was what was called the 70-20-10 theory of best practice learning. So maybe 70% of doing it on the job, 20% about working with your peers and networking, and 10% of it being, some sort of formal education of some sort.
Yeah.
And I do think that being able to apply your practice is the best kind of learning mechanism. I'm not saying that's right for everyone, but especially in the world of coaching, you've got to be able to apply with players, other coaches, parents, whoever you're working with. That's the best way to learn.
And the value of having people in a room where they can have a conversation about whatever it may be, or share some experiences and whatever else. That doesn't happen the same on Zoom or Teams or whatever platform people use. It's not quite the same. I don't know. It doesn't have the same feel, if that kind of makes sense. And I think you can't replace that being in the room.
Yeah. I think I've had a few coaches, and it's quite an interesting one who have, doing their best, flexible, and do you know what? We'll do some Zoom coaching with your kids, which is great, keeping them interactive and that. But many of them have gone, you know what, Russ, that was hard work, because you don't get that personal approach back and other things. And I'll give you one little bit. There's a coach now called Tom, great guy, but he coaches in India, and he's had to come back for obvious reasons. And he's been coaching with Dudley Town. Now, Tom, he still has to do his coaching commitments in India. So he does it through WhatsApp and Zoom at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning because of the time difference. And he's 6-7 months into this now, and he's like, Russ, this is so hard. Yeah. Because you don't get that physical, social, emotional give back of the digital stuff, really.
I think you're right, and I think we've all been on courses, Ross. Blimey enough, more courses than anyone, and at that time, you come back to that bit you talked about earlier about the network. That's how you build your network. Being in the room, having the conversations, listening to a tutor, being on the grass, whatever it might be. That's for me where it really starts to develop, and you don't quite get the same feel in an online environment, I don't think. Listen, is there some value to online digital learning courses because people can do it at their own time, and I'm sure it's more cost effective to once it's all set up to deliver it. So there's bound to be some positives, but I think you still need that that in the room on the grass with people, that experience, because for me that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I think if you look at the job roles that we kind of work in the industry we work in, if we were all training to be data analysis for a bank where I can just do it at home on the internet, that's different. But in the world of people that you're working with, I think that digital learning has a place, but is not the way, it's our way. And a really good example of, I did these podcasts because I thought, what, A, I'm bored, B, I've got evenings free now, and Mrs. Smith will make me do some DIY so I can plan to do something else. But I've had over 700 interactions with these.
I can imagine.
I haven't seen 700 coaches in a month's period ever.
No. That's exactly right.
Positive.
I think the contact with our staff, I've never had all 30 staff in the room every week ever until this Zoom thing appeared. Obviously we never heard of, but existed. And there's value to that, and if nothing else, makes them feel some value because we were doing stuff and engaging with them during lockdown and and all that stuff. And listen, I'll carry on using it for some stuff. So I think about, I used to try and, we do a certain number of one-to-ones with all the staff over the course of a year. Three times I'll sit down and we'll talk about, what's your action plan, what you're working towards, what support you need, whatever it might be. And that was typically try and get in for 6, I'll have an hour with you before you coach at 7, or coach at 7 and we'll have an hour when you finish at 8:30 or whatever it might be. When actually now we can do it, you know, on a laptop at a time that suits everybody with a cup of coffee. No one's in a rush. And listen, I'll carry on using Zoom for some stuff for sure. You know, so it will definitely change little bits of what we do. But it's only, like you say, it's part of the process. It's not going to replace the process, because it can't replace the process. And also, I think, listen, things like the Black Country Coaches Club that you're now driving, and that there's various other things of similar format, are invaluable for coaches. Listen, I think back in the day when I was early 20s and, you know, doing after school clubs and whatever else, and there was actually very little support around for coaches. There was definitely no, you know, where do I go if I need some help? You know, now if you were lucky, you had a couple of people who you know worked with or knew and you had a good relationship with, who you could speak to. But actually, you know, there's now more support and more opportunity for people than there's probably ever been, Russ, and maybe more than there will ever be moving forward. I don't know, but you know, there's masses of support for people now, for coaches. You know, and I guess
that community of practice, isn't it?
Huge.
Community is massive, isn't it?
And just maybe working out actually which bits do I need to engage with and which bits don't I, is a challenge for coaches around, because there is that much. You know, potentially I could probably listen to a webinar every day, or a podcast or whatever else, but actually I need to maybe pick and choose the bits that I do want to listen to.
That's a skill in itself, Rob, though, isn't it? Because I do that. I go, do you know what, UK coaching have sent me this, or FA sent me that, and I think, maybe. Absolutely. And being selective of your needs may be a top tip with using digital learning now, would you think?
Well, without a doubt. Like, you know, do you really, is it one, is it of interest? 2, is it going to be of value? Does it fit with what you want and what you need right now? Do you know what I mean? And if it doesn't, maybe right now it's not the thing I need to be listening to or looking at or whatever else, because actually all it does is just give me more stuff to be thinking about that I don't probably need right now. I think finding your way through that mess is the wrong term, but that amount of stuff that's out there, I think is a real challenge and skill for coaches right now, because there is so much. Like say you get sent an invite to this and an invite to that, and you know it's like I don't know if that one's for me. Maybe for me right now, I don't need to be spending an hour listening to that, because it's maybe not relevant.
Well, I hope people say, I really want to listen to Russ and Rob for an hour. So if you are, well done for getting this far and enjoying some top tips. So I'm going to take this conversation in our final bit. I normally have some questions from others who've sent in. And obviously we'll use this time to use your expertise or some advice and guidance on it. So my first question is from a student. Student's called Damari. And one of the things that a lot of students are asking Damari's need is, have you ever worked abroad, Rob? And what have been the, I suppose, benefits and advantages that's helped you by working abroad in coaching?
So the answer is yes. And listen, it's for me, it's just part of that experience, Russ. Do you know what I mean? It's just part of that. You throw it in the pot with all the other stuff. Do you know what I mean? That shapes the way you are and the way you coach and the way you work. It doesn't necessarily change what you do. It just gives you that other experience. So, God, yeah, a bit like you, mate. I've been lucky. So America, Dubai, India, China. You know, the sort of home countries. You know, Scotland and Ireland and whatever else. All over the place, and some of it coaching, some of it coach education. So I went to Dubai and delivered I don't know what they called it quite. It was the, like the overseas level 1, level 2 courses that they run through the FA.
Yeah. International license is what they call it.
The 10 days international license in Dubai. It was unbelievable. Do you know what I mean? It was unbelievable. I'm still in contact with 2 of the learners from that course via like LinkedIn and whatever else who work in other parts of the world, and unbelievable experience. The China and India thing were were crazy. You know, one came about through the fact I was involved in England colleges football at the time, and one came about through being involved with Birmingham University. You know, and all the little bits about, you know, coaching players who can't speak English and, you know, that kind of stuff. Just a phenomenal experience, Russ. Culturally, socially, coaching wise, just unbelievable. And listen, for me, it goes back to the days when I finished being an electrician and went back to college to study, spending 2 summers doing camps in the States, you know, and strangely enough, I got invited into a Facebook group early this week with a load of those other guys who were part of that organisation when we did summer camps, and we're sharing photos and, you know, whatever else, and a few stories of, you know, thinking a sprinkler was a rattlesnake and whatever else it might be. Just unbelievable experiences, Russ. Just, and if I'm a student now, I would be, without a shadow of a doubt, going abroad. You know, whether it's just for a summer or a, you know, there's lots of, you know, certainly America, Australia, there's lots of 9-month contracts, 6-month contracts. You know, you can probably be a level 2 and then apply for those kind of roles. And if you're going to go, the time to go is when you're a student. Do you know what I mean? When you've got no or limited, you know, expenditure and responsibility in terms of house, car, family, etc. But listen, unbelievable, great experiences, and you know, and there's lots of people who now live and work in the States who would have been exactly the same, were students and just stayed out there and you know took the opportunity while it was there. And we talk about opportunity and the number of jobs in the game. Listen, it's not just in the UK and, you know, over here. There's, you know, one of my best mates is coaching in the Thai Premier League. You know, there's opportunities all over the world to coach and or work in sport, not just coaching, but analysis and S&C and, you know, whatever it might be. And that, again, that's the network piece, isn't it? You know, go to the States, meet a few people. You never know what opportunities come out of it.
Absolutely. Second question then, grassroots coaches view, and these are from the 2 Toms. One Tom Kingsley, one Tom Cuford. That little bit of advice that you would give of someone who does have children, does have a mortgage, does have a job, making the change to become a coach in your job. Obviously, you've worked with other adults who may have done this and left their job behind, and, you know, I suppose there's a lot of value in waking up every day going, do you know what, I really like my job, to I'm just doing the job for the money. And we find that some people have, especially the Toms as the example, they have a job that they're not really too bothered about, and they want to make that change into coaching. What top tips or advice would you give from your experience or what you've seen along the way in your career?
So listen, I think it's get yourself in the right place first. So don't jump too early. Get yourself in the right place where you can start to get some experience. So, for example, things like volunteering with us would be an example of that. Do you know what I mean? So, you know, make yourself available to identify and take opportunities like that. Because I think one of the interesting things is this, Russ. You know, it's working in what is deemed elite sport, professional game, whatever. Sounds like really sexy and, you know, really exciting, whatever else. And listen, you know, you said it there. I don't get up in the morning thinking, here we go again. Do you know what I mean? It's a pleasure to be able to do what I do. So, you know, I'm lucky, but I've also, you know, I feel like I've worked hard to get to where I've got to. So maybe it's not all luck, but so you've got to put yourself in the right place first, and network with the right people and get that experience. Because actually, you might get involved in, say, academy football and go, it's not really what I thought it was. And actually, it's more hard work than I thought, or it doesn't quite fit with, you know, because I'd be out 3 nights a week and a Sunday and this, that, and the other. So it's get in and really get a feel for what it's all about. Then it's about making sure you meet the minimum requirements. So although, you know, we've sort of talked about qualifications aren't the be all and end all, but it's what will get you in the door. Because, you know, people may or may not know, it's, you know, as clubs, we're audited. So we're, you know, there's a there's requirements we have to fulfil to maintain our status as an academy. Part of that is coaching qualifications, so we have to have, you know, certain number of staff, but they've got to have certain qualifications and so on. So put yourself in a position where you know, you can get those qualifications, and that for me is the start of it. But you then need to do the work, be the right sort of person, demonstrate, you know, that you're the right sort of person, and you also need them alongside that. You need a bit of support from outside. Do you know what I mean? So you know, I know, you know, we're probably very lucky. We're supported by family and, you know, stuff like that. You know, you need that as well because
I
of
think
the
being
nature
brave is something too, and you know, especially for the older guys, you know, you can work for yourself. You don't have to work for someone. And like coaching as a profession, so you know, as long as you've got public liability insurance, relevant training and qualification, you know, you can work for yourself. There's a load of stuff where it could be working with schools or holiday programs.
And listen,
And
a full-time job in football isn't necessarily a full-time job with one organisation. You know, I think we've got a number of lads who work with us who are our part-time staff, but then they maybe work in a college program coaching during the day. Do you know what I mean? They might run their own little, you know, sort of one-to-one type stuff, whatever it might be as well. So they have 2 or 3 jobs, but those 2 or 3 jobs make up the full-time job.
And we've been there, haven't we? And like, you know, I think he's one of our Black Country coaches. He's a good role model, Matt. He works within your program, Matt Beach.
Yeah.
And I often see him in different settings and I go, oh, you work here too. Oh, you work here as well. But we've been there, haven't we? We've not just had one job. We've probably had 3, 4 or 5, you know.
Absolutely. And Matt, listen, Matt's a classic example. Matt came in as a volunteer because he wanted to identify opportunities to work in an academy. And listen, to be fair, fairly quickly, it was quite part again timing and all the rest of it. You know, we happened to have an opportunity that he made himself interested in and applied for, and he now works with one of our age groups. So it's probably happened a bit quicker than I would have expected. He may have thought it would happen, but he's now a paid member of staff with us. But listen, you know, he's well qualified. He's got a range of experiences, you know, certainly around grassroots and non-league and schools and all that stuff, a lot of which he still does alongside coming in part-time for us a couple of times a week on a Sunday. You know, and he's been I've had a couple of conversations with Matt, really interesting, because the environment's very different for him. And he said to me last week, I almost feel like I'm a novice again, because it's so different to the environment that he's worked in before. And I'm like, well, that, you know, for you, that's really good, isn't it? That's exactly what you want. It's what you came here for. That was the purpose of you, you know, potentially coming and getting involved in the first place. You've now got to go back to the start and get that experience again, get on the grass and try it. And do you know what I mean? Make some mistakes, and because just like you would have done when you started coaching grassroots, you know, however many years ago he started. So he's a prime example for me, Matt. And actually, you know, listen, I'm not going to blow smoke up, you know, he's very good. Do you know what I mean? But he's also still learning. Certainly in our environment, he's learning. But he's full-time in the game. He's probably got 2 or 3 little roles that he fulfills as a coach.
And that's a great place for us to say someone from the Black Country has done it, linked with some of the bits that Rob's talked about today, developed a network, benefited from taking experiences. And, you know, the underpinning arch of our chat with Rob today was about the network, what's it like in an academy, how to learn, different ways to learn and network. And I think, you know, that example of Matt, if you don't know Matt, he's a great guy. He's on Twitter. I'll tag him in some of the stuff that comes out. It's a great way to say you can do it, folks. And, you know, there's a pathway there if you want to do it. Rob Williams, I thank you for your time today. Hopefully you've enjoyed our chat.
Listen, I've really enjoyed this. I could sit and talk coaching, Matt. You know that we have numerous conversations. It's not a hardship having a conversation about it. And I would just finish up with, listen, for anybody out there that thinks they're interested or would like to, you know, have a look at some stuff. Obviously, so COVID kind of means we can't just have anybody in at, you know, certain times and whatever else. That's a little bit different. But if people think they would maybe like to look at career opportunities and think about volunteering and stuff, listen, I'm more than welcome to link into me through you, Russ, and I'll have a chat and share some thoughts. And there's the opportunities there for people if they can keep it's for them.
And that's much appreciated. Thank you, Rob. So just to finish up by saying thank you, Rob. Guys, there's 2 more podcasts to come to finish off next week in the lockdown period. We've got a chat with me grassroots friends, me coach mates from various clubs about return to play, some funny things that's happened in grassroots. Sometimes, as one coach, Craig, said to me, the moment when the penny dropped will be some things that they shared. And then we're going to finish off with the king of the Black Country. Pete Sturgis is on with us live. That'll be delivered for you for next Thursday with top tips, working with young people, vision for how we can develop more creative players, and just being ace in the Black Country. Thank you, guys. Speak soon.